We've got breaking news. The United Arab Emirates says it intercepted 3 cruise missiles from Iran today in the first attack since the ceasefire went into effect. A 4th missile fell into the sea. The missile attacks come just hours after the president launched what he called Project Freedom. It's a plan for the U.S. to guide stranded ships through the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has effectively closed. So far, 2 U.S.-flagged merchant vessels have passed through the strait, according to U.S. Central Command. And CENTCOM says the operation will involve 15,000 service members, guided missile destroyers, and more than 100 land and sea-based aircraft. Joining us now, MS Now contributor Inzamam Rashid, who's in Dubai, retired U.S. Army General James Spider Marks, and Peter Baker is back with me. Inzamam, what can you tell us about these Iranian attacks and the U.S. Navy operation?
Well, Chris, today the UAE has come under attack from Iran, and Iran is escalating this conflict, flexing their military muscle to remind the Gulf nations, to remind the US that they still have military capabilities to cause damage and to cause destruction. And that's exactly what they've done today. Of course, on the water, we've seen conflict, we've seen volatile conflict take place in the Strait of Hormuz, but specifically related to the UAE, we've seen 2 UAE oil tankers have been targeted and struck by Iranian fire. Both of them have been damaged. One of them where the engine room was struck. They're both just off the coast of the UAE, and one was carrying the national oil to another country. And then we've seen, as you mentioned, 4 cruise missiles coming towards the UAE, 3 of them intercepted by the Ministry of Defense here, one of them falling into the sea. And then the latest news we're receiving is in Fujairah, which is one of the northern emirates of the United Arab Emirates, has been attacked today. The Fujairah petroleum industrial zone there has been targeted. So an energy facility was struck by an Iranian drone, causing an advanced fire. And the authorities there say that 3 people have been injured as a result. So, look, I think what Project Freedom has essentially done has threatened to bring the US and Iran back into war. And that's exactly what we've seen play out today. The US Navy blockade remains in the Strait of Hormuz. That was making Iran very unhappy. We've heard the rhetoric from President Trump ramping up that military action could take place. And now this Project Freedom started today, trying to essentially get US Navy vessels to escort oil tankers and other ships through the Strait of Hormuz, has sent Iran over the edge and effectively made them now cause fire and attack into the UAE. And I think what we will see now is a potential retaliation, maybe directly from the UAE in the coming days, but maybe as well from the US and Israel, because we were supposed to be in this ceasefire, remember, Chris. That tonight kind of feels like it's been broken because of these attacks.
So, Peter, before all of this happened, before those missiles made their way to the UAE, here's how Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent described this operation.
This is an international humanitarian operation. We are opening the strait. The Iranians do not have control of the strait. The U.S., we are just firing if fired upon. We are not the provocateurs here. But if the Iranians want to escalate here, we are willing to escalate.
The White House had been under a lot of pressure, as you know, to get things moving in the strait. Is Project Freedom a sign that the president understands that Republicans are getting crushed by this standoff in the Strait of Hormuz and needs to do something? Or how do you see it?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, look, he has to look like he is doing something about this. It is absolutely, a debilitating situation where they can't control the Strait of Hormuz, which was open before this war began. Now, what I think he's trying to do, of course, is also get leverage in any negotiations that might or might not take place in the coming days. If he can take away some of that, trump card, who used that expression, that Iran has over the strait, it gives the president a little bit more negotiating room. But the fact of the matter is, it's not clear that these shipping companies are going to feel really comfortable about this. That doesn't mean just because the U.S. Navy is there guiding them, they don't know what that means. They're not sure if that is necessarily safe. They have insurance concerns. It's not going to provide the kind of open waterways that is necessary to get the amount of oil out that we're normally used to seeing getting out of there.
So, Spider, does this operation put U.S. troops, even those commercial ships, in danger? I mean, is there a way for the U.S. to operate this Project Freedom in such a way, or the way it is being done, to guarantee anybody's safety?
Well, Chris, risk is always attended to military operations. When you have soldiers and we have this type of a presence, there's going to be an increased risk. Just the mere deployment puts, puts units at risk and puts those sailors and those members of those organizations at risk. Look, there are several ways that this can be conducted. If you go back in history, you look at the late 80s, the U.S. Navy conducted an operation called Earnest Will, where we reflagged Kuwaiti vessels under U.S. flagging and got them through the Straits of Hormuz. The Iranians resisted. They mined the straits. In fact, one of our destroyers was hit back then. And then we went about and conducted another operation, and we sunk the Iranian Navy into the bottom of the Gulf. That was the late 80s. So there could be a reflagging operation that would take place, but I think we have to have a very measured expectation in terms of how this is going to turn out. First, it'll be done extremely professionally. The United States Navy knows how to do this. It could be the positioning of destroyers at different locations through the straits. Or, in other words, you then pass a vehicle off to another destroyer, one of those vessels, and those vessels provide you three-dimensional protection, not only from space and air, but also subsurface and obviously surface as the tankers then pass through. Or you could line up the tankers and then put a string of Navy vessels on both sides and say, okay, we're just going to physically escort you through until you depart. Also, I would anticipate that this could be an opening of two-way traffic, both in and out. We'll have to see how that works relative to the rules of engagement of the blockade as they've been described so far. But all of this, the naval term is all about Q routes, establishing Q routes, and that is a safe passage through restricted areas. And in this particular case, that very specific naval challenge is mining in the straits.
I guess to Peter's point about whether or not folks whose ships are sitting there waiting to move through the strait are willing to risk it. You have what we saw today, right? 4 missiles fired from Iran, 3 of them intercepted by the UAE. One of them apparently fell into the sea. But does it look to you like if we're not now, we are headed back to where we were before the ceasefire, and that makes the possibility of the success of an operation like this less?
Yeah, really good point. Look, there are essentially multiple layers to this. Strategically, what you're describing is the potential for this thing re-escalating back to an epic fury type of an engagement. High volume, lots of velocity of targeting, what we saw over the course of the first 7 weeks. Or what you could see is in support of this safe passage, which is what's trying to be achieved here. Freedom of navigation is the objective here. But what you could see is the accidents that occur as Iranian vessels that are going to try to interrupt that, those what we call mosquito boats, those fast boats that are moving in and have the ability to engage with some missile capability as well as mining capability. If the United States Navy can identify those, they should be able to, then you could have the escalation with a tactical engagement, then has the unintended consequences of what happens in a very specific area over a very finite period of time. What we're concerned about is, does this now escalate back into an epic fury type of an engagement? And I'm not sanguine that the application of force on this regime, any additional application of force on this regime is going to change their behavior. Look, it's all about, as we've discussed, it's all about Iran not having a nuke, not having proxies that can threaten the region and beyond, and not having missile capabilities for their regional threats as well as global. Those are the red lines. Everything else, I think, is unnecessary at this point.
Peter, I'm out of time, but I want to ask you quickly, given, and we talked about this earlier in the program, the political vice that Republicans find themselves in as a result of the skyrocketing prices that happen as a result of what's happening in the Middle East. Is diplomacy off the table? What's the next step?
No, I don't think diplomacy is off the table. With Donald Trump, he's always looking for a deal. And the military at this point is possible leverage point for that deal if he can get there. I think the trouble is finding a deal that both sides can live with. The trick for the challenge for the president is that Iran doesn't think it's lost this war. Iran thinks it can wait him out. Iran is looking at the same numbers that we're talking about, looking at the same economic pain points that we're discussing, and they think that they can either, wait him out or at least drive a better deal than they would have before, because they understand that he's under pressure. And the trick for President Trump is making clear that that's not going to change his, demands, his bottom line. And we don't know what his bottom line really is. So how do you have a deal in which he can tell the American people he got what he needed out of it, and Iran can accept it as well in terms of its future, in terms of the nuclear program, in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, in terms of all these different factors? It's hard to see what that deal looks like right now.